Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sorry, we'll have to do that again. You'll have to take your sound off.
Oh, sorry.
Can you knock your sounds off?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I can do it actually. Very good. Right, try again. Here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So I'm looking at the chapter now on diligence, appamado, and it's the first 3 verses. So I shall do my usual little bit of chanting. Appamado amata padam, pamado machuno padam, appamatana miyanti ye, yapamata yatamata. Evam we say sato nyatva, appama dhammi pandita, appama de pamadanti, ariyanang gochara rata, teja tejayino satatika, nichang dalha parakama, pusanti dira nibbānang, yoga ke manganuttarang. Translation. Vigilance is the path to the deathless, negligence the path to death. The vigilant do not die, the negligent are as if already dead. Knowing this distinction, vigilant sages rejoice in vigilance, delighting in the company of the noble ones. Absorbed in meditation, persevering, always steadfast, the wise touch nibbana, a better translation would be attain nibbana, the ultimate rest from bondage, the ultimate escape from bondage. So that's the translation. Now the story is a bit strange, and it was very long, so I've narrowed it down to specifics. So the King Udana of Kosambi, he had a few consorts, I dare say, but one of them was Samawati. Now Samawati had maids, and Kujutara used to fetch flowers from the florist for her every day. And one day when she got there, the Buddha was giving a sermon. And on hearing it, she became a stream entrant because of her past very good karma. Anyway, when she went back, she told Samawati about this and related the whole talk to her and the other maids. And they all took on a devotion to the Buddha, so much so that they put holes in the walls of their apartment, of their palace, so that when the Buddha came on arms round, they could bow to him. Now, the reason they put holes in the wall, because they didn't want to tell the king, because they thought he might be a bit upset. Now, his other consort was a very beautiful woman called Magandiya. Now, her father, the Brahmin, had actually offered her as a wife to the Buddha. And the Buddha, of course, said that he was way beyond all sensual, romantic pleasure, none of that. But then he went on to say, why would he be attracted to a body full of filth? And then he gave a discourse on impermanence, and the Brahmin and his wife became anagamis, which means non-returners. But the daughter was offended, and she vowed revenge. So the first thing she did when she heard that the other wife, Samawati, had been bowing to the Buddha, and looking at him through these holes in the wall, she told the king, Udena, thinking that he would be extremely angry. But when he was when they explained to him what they were doing, he was quite all right with it. So now she began to what's the word? Gaslight. Began putting little ideas that in fact the Samawati was out to kill him or do him great harm. And one time when the king determined to see his wife taking a lute along, a veena, and this Magandia hid a snake in it and put flowers in the hole. Anyway, when the king got to the queen and her maids, the flowers were taken out, the snake jumped out at him, and he realized then that in fact they had meant to kill him. So he lined them up in a row and took out his bow and arrow and began to shoot them. But the arrow kept missing the target, even though he was an excellent archer, which meant that they were innocent. So he gave up. He let them off. Anyway, that wasn't the end of it. Magandia now was really in a very bad mood. And she asked her uncle with some relatives to come and burn the palace down. And that's what they did. They burnt the palace down. And when the king heard this, he rushed over, and I shall read the last paragraph. As soon as he heard the news that all had been burnt, the king rushed to the scene, but it was too late. He suspected that it was done at the instigation of Magandia, but did not show that he was suspicious. Instead, he said, while Samawati was alive, I had been fearful and alert, thinking I might be harmed by her. Only now is my mind at peace. Who would have done this? It must only have been someone who loves me very dearly. Hearing this, the foolish Magandia promptly admitted that it was she who had instructed her uncle to do this terrible deed. Thereupon the king pretended to be very pleased with her and said that he would grant her a great favor and honor all her relatives. So the relatives were sent for, and they came gladly. On arrival at the palace, however, all of them, including Magandia, were seized and put to death in the palace courtyard. Thus, the evil Magandia was punished for plotting the death of the holy queen and her attendants. And when the Buddha heard of these incidents, it says incidents here, these little things, he then spoke these verses concerning diligence. Now, frankly, I don't quite know how that fits into the story of diligence, but we shall let that be. So just a little bit of vocabulary here from the Pali. Yes, when this amata, the word amata, the deathless, is often a way that the Buddha talks about nibbana. It's a state of deathlessness. Pada means footsteps, so the path to the deathless, the quality of diligence is really important. And the commentary doesn't say much more. It just says, negligence, on the other hand, is the way to repeated cycle of birth and death. So remember that rebirth is presumed in all the Buddhist scriptures, samsara, the onward going. And that's what happens to people who aren't diligent. In the second verse, so the first verse, just to remind you, was, let me go back a bit. Oh, where's the first verse? Oh, I've lost the first verse. Hold on. Here we go. Vigilance is the path to the deathless, negligence the path to death. The vigilance do not die, the negligent are as if already dead. Okay? Now in the second verse, knowing this distinction, vigilant sages rejoice in vigilance, delighting in the field sphere, dimension of the noble ones. So just an interesting word there, gochara is where the cows go. Go is cow and chara means to go. So it's basically a pasture. So you might say it's their club. So they've, the wise ones have distinctly understood the importance of vigilance, and we'll come to that a little later. And they rejoice in it. They're, you know, they're sort of happy when they're in that state of vigilance. And it's the same for us, I hope. And the third one is absorbed in meditation, persevering, always steadfast. The wise attain nirvana, the ultimate rest from bondage. Or here the translation has been put as toil, but yoga is a bond. Now, a bond or a yoke, it might in the Dhammapada, it might be referring to the 10 fetters. We won't go into them so much, but the 10 fetters are what you have to get rid of to become fully liberated. But yoga became a technical term later on for the three, it had three qualities: acquisitiveness, right? Always trying to hold on and get hold of things and people, wrong view that this would bring happiness, and delusion, which is always basically to do with the sense of self. So if so long as we believe in some smallest way that we are this psychophysical organism, we'll be seeking happiness through this form, and it will always be disappointing in the end because we die. So there's no particular word there to look at apart from yoga. Now, in the commentary, the one little line is one has to persevere constantly and with right effort. Now, I had on my tips, you know, if you go into resources and then tips, you'll find one on appamada. And there's a verse there that I've quoted, which says, the Buddha says, I do not see even a single thing that so causes latent unwholesome qualities to arise and arisen wholesome qualities to decline than negligence. For one who is heedless or negligent, latent unwholesome qualities arise and arisen wholesome qualities decline. And of course, there's the opposite when one is actually diligent. Anyway, I looked up in the thesaurus the synonyms for this diligence. And I came up with a whole load of words, of course, which then happily could be divided into three qualities. So first of all, there was mindfulness, attentiveness, vigilance, being heedful. Then there was a sense of care, careful, conscientious, meticulous, thorough, painstaking. And then there was the quality of effort, hardworking, industrious, assiduous, zealous, dogged perseverance. So these three qualities are included in the word diligence. Mindfulness, right? Attention, care. So where you put your mind, always put your heart into what you're doing, right? There has to be a sense of care, even just doing something carefully, yeah? And of course, that effort, the right effort to complete what one is doing as best one can. Now, and then I've suggested that there were some reflections that one can make. So at the end of the day, one can ask, how mindful have I been all day? Yeah. You don't want to ask it if you're going to be very disappointed. Well, no, if you ask it and you're very disappointed, then of course we should encourage ourselves, right? That's where you make the determination in the evening, tomorrow I shall try to be more attentive. And then the next one would be, have I been careful with everything I've done? Have I been gentle? Have I been Have I put my heart into what I'm doing? Have I done it for good reasons? Yeah. And then finally, did I put the right effort in? Did I actually complete the task, whatever I was doing, you see? And of course, this appamado is expressed not only in our doing, but in the way we speak, of course, and the way we think. So remember, everything starts with something in the head and then manifests through our speech and action. Just as a little aside, it is one of the 7 heavenly virtues, as opposed to the 7 deadly sins. So the first one is chastity, purity, abstinence, and the opposite, of course, is lust and all that. The next one is temperance, and it's put as humanity, equanimity, and the opposite is gluttony. Then the next one is charity, goodwill, benevolence, generosity, sacrifice, and the opposite is greed. Now the next one is diligence. Now the Latin word for diligence is industria, hence industry. Persistence, effortfulness and ethics. And the opposite is sloth. You see. So we'll come to that in a minute. Patience, which is forgiveness and mercy, and the opposite is anger, hatred. Kindness, which is satisfaction and compassion. It actually, the Latin word is humanitas, so I don't quite know how that fits. The opposite is envy. And finally, humility, bravery, modesty, reverence, and the opposite is pride. And of course, when I looked up the synonyms for diligence, they also give you the antonyms. And that's also something we can remind ourselves of. Lazy, sluggish, slothful, can't be bothered, do it tomorrow, slapdash. So we've got lots of ways there to consider our actions during the day, even after every action, So this quality of heedfulness, that's Bhikkhu Bodhi's preferred word, heedfulness, but others translate it as diligence. Remember that it's his last words, yeah? All things, all compounded things are impermanent. Appamadena sampadeta. Strive diligently for your liberation. So that was his second to last word before he completed his journey. So that's something to consider. I can only hope my words have been of some assistance, so that they have not caused even greater confusion, and that by your diligence you will be liberated from all suffering sooner rather than later.